In this segment, we're going to have the opportunity to chat with Claire Best. She's the Monitoring and Evaluation Specialist in the Energy Division in the Ministry of Energy, Small Business and Entrepreneurship. And she brings with her 20 years of experience in this particular field. So I feel we're going to have a great conversation. How are you doing, Claire?
I'm fine, thank you.
So Claire, tell us what your department's role is in the renewable energy landscape in Barbados.
Thank you. Well, the Division of Energy, when I came here in '07, this was after I had had experience in the Ministry of Industry and Commerce. We were at the point in time working with energy as a three-pronged fork. There was electricity, there was renewables, and there was oil and gas, petroleum products.
Okay.
At that time, our responsibilities were fairly limited and our job was fairly clear-cut. Now, in 2021, this is a full buffet. This is not a fork. We're dealing with matters of grid integration. We're dealing with matters of policy determination. We're dealing with matters covering the gamut of energy. So we're also dealing with going into the offshore oil and gas arena and the offshore oil sector. And for this ministry, the responsibilities therefore have to cover what is encapsulated in our national energy policy. That document speaks of a target to 2030 where we transition the sector into a fossil fuel-free sector, where we will be able to benefit from generating energy from our own indigenous sources.
So you spoke about a process that has grown over time.
Yes, please.
So how does manufacturing fit into there? How many manufacturers have registered?
Okay, well, this is where it gets interesting. When you think of manufacturing, and unfortunately for other people, they think of things like pepper sauce and jam. Did you know that Light and Power is a registered manufacturer?
I did not know.
Light and Power manufactures electricity.
They do.
Yes. So not only do we have those old brick and mortar manufacturing entities who've benefited from programs we've run in the ministry, such as the Energy Smart Fund, which was initially launched in 2011. So we had agro-processors coming on. They were coming on to do installations of PVs on their roof to reduce their electricity prices. They were doing EE, more efficient lighting, refrigeration for people who have to do refrigeration in their processes. So not only that kind of manufacturer, but now we've got a whole new class, the independent power producer, who is the person who will generate electricity and manufacture electricity. So to ask me how many manufacturers, it's like everybody. Anyone at this point in time can come to the ministry, apply for your renewable energy license and benefit, and also be registered as a manufacturer.
So explain to people how this actually benefits. I mean, you spoke about cost reduction in
Yes,
certain
I did.
places because you don't have to incur those costs, therefore you don't have to pass them along.
Yes,
but how
please.
does that benefit the economy as a whole?
Oh, how much time do you have?
Well,
For us, the reduction in cost of fossil fuel is an economy-wide target. I spoke to you before of the 2030 target where we will seek to transition to fossil fuel-free. We anticipate benefits in the region of $400 million a year.
okay.
That's economy-wide. For manufacturers and for small business people who can put a system on their roof, you can achieve what we call net zero status. You can invest upfront the cost of a system or through other arrangements benefit from the installation of a system that can reduce your cost of electricity to zero. So we're talking about taking that line item away from you. And you have systems now generating way beyond the time it will take you to pay back for the system. So you will continue to benefit. So there you go.
Well, what size manufacturer are we talking about? Because I can understand if you're in an industry where you use a lot of refrigeration or you, as you say, you generate a lot of fuel or you consume it for that matter. But what if I just have a really tiny operation?
My hairdresser has a system.
Oh, okay.
And she speaks to me in glowing terms about how she's been able to reduce her cost of electricity. We have now recapitalized the Energy Smart Fund that I mentioned earlier into a Smart Fund 2. So this is a massive project. This is almost $100 million in project. And a good chunk of that is targeted specifically for small and medium-sized enterprises, as well as the tourism sector. Because we recognized in the initial Smart Fund, many agro-processors, most of our business came from agro-processors in that fund. This fund allows you to not only get money for loans, but the good part about it is you can get grant-free money. You can have an energy audit done by what we call a Smart Fund partner. They can come and they can advise you again now. For your hairdressing salon, you could probably look to use a system of exercise. You could probably look to install an air conditioning unit that would be more efficient, and this could reduce your cost by X amount. Take that energy audit information and bring it back and benefit from a loan to buy the necessary equipment to have those kind of things installed in your on your property and derive the benefit from that.
So this is basically a system to not only provide, but get people set up with it. So the grants, the loans,
Yes,
the opportunity,
please. Yes, please.
you know, the ways to pay back over time so you don't feel it right up front and tell yourself, too prohibitive.
We understand the challenges of the times that we're in right now. We really want to help. It's seen as a transformative sector. It's seen as a sector that can really propel the economy forward. We've had windmills from when we had slaves. It's nothing new. You can have solar, you can have wind. Islands in the region can have geothermal. It's nothing new under the sun, which is kind of corny, but yeah. So we can have benefit derived from what we have as indigenous sources and reduce the cost and the fluctuating prices that we now suffer from when we use fossil fuels almost exclusively.
Well, let's talk a bit about these fluctuating prices, because normally we associate those specifically with agriculture. When this increases, that increases, and we feel it in our pocket by the time we hit our supermarkets and our village shops, et cetera, et cetera. So how is your ministry working to ensure the harmonious existence between energy investments, agriculture, and agro-processing?
That is an excellent question. This ministry sits as energy. And years ago, I remember having a conversation with one of our sister ministries about the fact that everybody wanted to do an energy project. Everybody wanted to do something in energy. For us, we've been able to work with sister sectors like water. When they develop their water zoning policy, the new water zoning policy, there is a breakout in there for land that cannot have construction on it, to benefit from ground-mounted renewables, because we don't generate nitrates, we don't contribute to any of the environmental issues that come when you have construction in what would now be Zone A lands. So there's that. We've also have an arrangement in the similar Zone A with the same water zoning policy where you can have like fodder for the feedstock and seedlings and so on under the ground mount. And that has gone into the physical development plan now. That's town planning. So when we come to manufacturers now, again, the conversation is open. We sit on committees. We have the conversations with them. We tell them how they can benefit, and we work together. So you can have organizations like BREA, which is the Barbados Renewable Energy Association,
right,
working in conjunction with us to develop policies and ideas that can benefit a myriad of the sectors in Barbados.
So from this very brief conversation, you work with the hairdresser straight up to BL&P.
Yes, please.
That is a massive, massive span. So in your final outtake, what would you say primarily would be your goal, especially as we look towards 2030? That seems to be the magic number right now, 2030. And how far along are we to reaching those goals?
Okay, what would be the goal and how far along are we? We're in year 2/3 of the execution of the National Energy Policy. I only know this because we work with this document every day. Anyone who goes on our website, energy.gov.bb, and downloads a copy of the energy policy or a copy of the implementation plan that accompanies the energy policy and turns to page 22 of the implementation plan, will see a chart which delineates for the first 5 years what our individual targets are.
Okay.
Now, at year 2, we were supposed to be at 64 megawatts of installed PV and 20 megawatts of installed storage, because the sun sets at night. So you can't really, So right now we are at 52 megawatts of installed PV and we are at 5 megawatts of storage. So we're not there. But what the implementation plan did that I really liked is that it said there is a need for certain regulation and policy to have what we call base load generation on the grid, which is not like solar that will, go down at night, but something that can run all of the time.
Right.
And we need to get financing for that because that's more expensive than the PV. So what we're trying to do now as a goal is to finish that groundwork so that we can have then a faster transition in the second half of this policy. So we're doing what is like the low-hanging fruit now.
Right.
Working behind the scenes to get the rest of the stuff in place. New licenses for the utility to accommodate the new IPPs, the independent power producers that I mentioned earlier. Because now Light and Power won't be the only body manufacturing electricity.
Right.
So we've got to have a harmonious amalgamation of that. So working on those kind of regulations, those kind of licenses, the agreements that have to be put in place for that, while we do the low-hanging fruit. So our goal is to make sure that we do what we need to do to get where we need to get by 2030.
And of course, you cannot leave a single conversation anywhere in Barbados without asking, has COVID negatively impacted the timeline? Or is it something you've been able to work with?
What a year. COVID, Elsa, the volcano. Imagine you were a PV system on a roof. This is not a good year for you.
Yeah.
The fortunate thing for us is that COVID would not have affected the installations that were already in place because the sun was still shining.
Right.
So even if you were not in the building, you were still able to generate revenue from what you had installed. The ash was a little more tricky because, that fell on the PV systems. And if you could see it, if you could actually see the production just like, it just went down. But, we had heavy rains 3 days after and the production did like this, right back up. So we didn't really have, even though we had a rough year, COVID, the Elsa, we did not lose any of the PV systems that we had installed after Elsa. Our systems on installation are supposed to be able to withstand up to category 3. Even this morning, we spoke about that. What we saw as damage after Elsa was mainly small, very minor issues with cables. But these PV systems themselves did not sustain any damage, any of the ones that we had responsibility for installation. So between Elsa, that volcanic ash, and the pandemic, the renewable energy installations have been able to manage okay.
I want to thank you so much. You have literally enlightened, I know you got that, a lot of people with this particular segment and, really caused us to look at renewable energy in very different ways. Sometimes we hear catchphrases all the time and they just go right over here.
Yeah.
But because you were able to literally put it down to dollars and cents, timelines, attribute faces, hairdresser, Light and Power,
yes,
anyone in between, I think that you're going to get a much better response. And I hope that you do.
I do too, because we could have gone we didn't even touch electric mobility. That's another category that manufacturers can benefit from.
That's right.
Offshore wind. Again, I could have kept you here all day.
Claire, I want to thank you so much for literally enlightening all of us about renewable energy. Now we can actually put renewable energy to use and know, hey, from the hairdresser to huge conglomerates like BL&P can utilize renewable energy and have an impact on the landscape.
Thank you.
Thank you. That renewable ball of energy, ladies and gentlemen, was Claire Best, the monitoring and evaluation specialist in the energy division.